everybody that's joining in. So glad that you're here for this very, very important conversation. So what's this show about, right? So let me talk a little bit about the show, and then I'll introduce all of our panelists as they come in. We still have multiple panelists joining in. We're just waiting on them. So right now, this show is called What's Your Story? And this episode is on Hindu Exodus. This is your host, Dr. Varun Gandhi. Love and abundance, everybody. By the way, this is the sign language for love. And that's why I always throw this up, love. All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. So what is this show about? This show is an exploration of our world. We talk about issues pertaining to the South Asian community. But these issues are not limited to us. They're shared across all communities. The question that I had in my mind is, how can we move the needle on these issues? One answer is through conversations like these, by talking about it, by learning about it, by reaching out to people who don't look like us and having these uncomfortable conversations. Frankly, this conversation for me was also uncomfortable. You know, we call this the land of the free, but we really don't have freedom. Why? Because we're bound by hate. We're bound by shame, by abuse, by rejection, by our differences. We're bound by so many other chains. And these are the issues that I want to bring to What's Your Story? So in the first few episodes, we discussed mental health, colorism, the cultural appropriation of yoga, and women's abuse in South Asian communities across the world. Our future topics include the true history of India, men's abuse, and the rape culture. You know, when I was doing this conversation on women's abuse, there are a lot of men in the audience who are saying, hey, what about the men? What about men's abuse? And so I found it very important that we need to talk about it. So I included that as one of the conversations that we're going to be talking about in the future. So who am I and why am I here? I have a background in science. I'm a researcher and I've published several scientific articles in the top environmental engineering journals. But I realized after working in this field for a couple of years that I wasn't making an impact anymore. At least I wasn't making that impact that I wish that I could make, that I knew that I could make. I had the potential, but I wasn't there yet. So that's when I began exploring outside of my traditional career path. You know, for 5-6 generations, we've been engineers. So this stepping outside of my traditional career path was a challenge. And as I stepped out, I became interested in storytelling. I realized stories are how we understand our world. Stories drive our perspectives. The story that we create, or the stories that are fed to us, determine the course of our lives. So I'll give you an example. And this is a true story, not my true story, but I've heard this. There was an alcoholic father, and he had 2 kids, twins. As they were growing up, this alcoholic father was very abusive. Every night he would come drunk, beat the kids, and then go to sleep. So as these kids grew up, one of them became an alcoholic, just like the father. The other one became a family man, and he had 2 kids and a wife and a stable life. We asked him, what happened? The first alcoholic person looked at his father and said, this is me. I can't be anything else but that. Whereas the other kid, the other twin, looked at the father and said, why do I want to become like this? I can change my life. So the story that he had in his mind was completely different from what his father had in his mind and what his brother had in his mind. So these stories are very important because they tell us who we are. But why does this matter? So I'll give you a personal story. I did my schooling in Dubai. I was in an Indian school which had a CBSE board. I'm sure many have heard of this. When I was learning Indian history, what was taught to me was that the Aryans invaded India. And while they invaded India, they civilized us. They trained us. They taught us in everything that we know thus far. So going off of this story, anybody would assume that our ancestors weren't capable of even constructing a building without the help of the Aryans. Thank God these guys came. But little did I know that his story, history, his story is littered with one-sided narratives. Of course, until recently. And this is what we're going to cover in today's conversation on the Hindu Exodus. So before I get to our panelists, just a few quick announcements. I want our panelists to know that this is a safe space. There is no judgment. So please share your experiences or audience, ask your questions without reservation. Also, ask questions at any time. Type it in your chat. I don't want you to think about it and keep it in your mind, but when you have it, just write it out in your chat and we will get to it at the right time. All right, so let's get to our panelists. First, we have Akanksha Dubey. She is a Dharmic Veerangana who runs the popular Instagram and YouTube channel named Youngndharmic. That's Young with the letter N, Dharmic, where she explains timeless concepts of Hinduism in an easy to understand manner to the youth. These complex concepts that originate from our ancient Shastras has been elegantly shared on all her channels. Welcome, Akanksha. I'd love for you to share a story, something personal that got you interested in teaching these concepts about the Sanatan Dharma.
Thank you, Varun. By the way, great job in starting this channel and telling us about yourselves. It's really nice to know that we are all in this together. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself, just to tell you like what my journey has been and where I'm trying to go to. I grew up in India. As like usually like the children of our like the generation of my age, like people, we grew up watching Raman and Sagar's Ramayana and Krishna. So like these kind of values were always instilled with it. Plus, like I'm from Agra, so it's very close to Mathura and Vrindavan. So it was always about like very like I kind of had a very religious upbringing, fortunately. So my family was always religious. Everyone I met was a little bit more into the practices and the rituals and everything that goes with the Hindu traditions. So all of that happened while I was growing up. But then like as you grew up and with the technology and all types of media available to you, you kind of like lose touch with dharma or with the way you have been grown up. You go to college and then you see all types of Bollywood movies, and you see like girls dancing on bars with like shorts up. So like these kind of things you watch, and you kind of like lose touch with those like pure emotions that you've been grown up with. So that's what happened with me also. Then I went to then I came to the US. I work here in a financial services firm. So like you get busy with your life, and then you start losing touch more and more. But that fire was always inside me. The realization that like the world is bigger than ourselves, and there's a lot more than we should believe in, instead of just like thinking about the usual eating, drinking, sleeping, like the usual things that we do. So that was always in the back of my mind. And then fortunately, like social media has so many different issues, but one of the great things that has happened with social media is awareness. The
Mm.
things that you believe in, if you kind of join those groups, or you kind of join those pages, or you kind of like follow the right people, you kind of know like what's happening in the world and where the biases are and what's going wrong. So you kind of like start getting aware. So like all of us, like anyone who is a little bit dharmic, or quote unquote right wing, started getting that awareness or that realization, which happened with me as well. And then like the constant attacks that we see on whether it's Hinduism or whether it's Hindu identity, you start getting angry, like you start feeling frustrated, like why it's happening and what can we do about it. So there are two ways, right, of handling something like this. One is you either debate, you get angry, you lash out on people and you fight with them and do all types of things. And the other thing is you take a positive approach and try to do something constructive about the situation or the problem that you're handling. I do both, by the way. But my aim is to be positive about the situation. And this is why I started this channel called Youngndharmic, as you introduced. And I basically try and explain the concepts that honestly, like, I didn't know, because when we were growing up, we were always like, yeah, mandir jana hai, puja karna hai, but we don't know like why is that happening. For example, very late in the game, I started understanding what Shiv Shakti is or what Brahm is. There's so many different things, amazing concepts that Hinduism has or Sanatan Dharma has that we don't have access to, partly because a lot of our stuff was destroyed by constant invasions and it's just not accessible. But I wanted something simpler and something easy to understand to be accessible to people, which wasn't accessible to me while growing up, even though I was dharmic, right? So that's the goal. And while doing that, I also want all of us to be proactive rather than reactive. Instead of someone coming to us and telling us that, hey, this is crap, like you like this doesn't make sense, we basically already have materials that prove that it does make sense, and we do have a great tradition, we do have a great culture behind us, and our practices do make sense. Then the second thing is instill pride in our culture. I don't know who to blame about this, but the education system, the invasions, everything that has happened with our country, we have lost pride in ourselves. So that pride needs to come back, and it is coming back. A lot of us, like people like you guys, Varun, Tanmay, like you guys, and like everything that I follow on social media, like it gives me a lot of pride to see that this is coming back. We are reviving. We hold pride in considering ourselves as Hindus. So that is the number two goal. Number three goal is basically just like learning these life changing concepts in order to live a more fulfilling life, right? We want to be better human beings. As human beings, we have, I'm sorry, I'm like ranting a lot. So
No,
tell
keep
me
going. I
when we are
love.
like losing time. But as human beings, our goal is to constantly evolve. Like, how are we supposed to evolve if you're watching songs like hook up song or like dhime dhime? Like, this is not what our kids should be exposed to. Our kids should be exposed to the timeless teachings that our rishis and sages have worked so hard to produce to ourselves. Like, we think about like if any one of you have read Vedas or like try to like get any information that is available from our scriptures, these rishis did a lot of hard work, and it is actually going into waste if we are not reading them or we are not learning from them. So that's the third goal, basically learn these life changing teachings to be better human beings. So that's what I'm trying to do: be positive, instill pride, and learn to become better human beings and be helpful to the creation instead of being destructive. So that's the thing.
You know, Kansha, when I was watching your channel and reading, going through all of your videos, you do an amazing job of explaining these concepts. You're very presentable, very personable. I love everything that you have on your channel. So thank you for doing what you're doing, because
Thank you so
and keep
much.
going.
I
Keep
love to talk, so that's my way to actually talk.
Yeah, I love everything that you have on your channel, and it's
Thank you.
very it's like it's just so engaging, you know. So keep doing what you're doing, because it's a amazing job that you're doing.
Appreciate it.
So our next panelist is Tanmay Chaudhary. He is a Shiv Bhakt, who believes in transcendentalism. He's a musician and an advertising professional. Welcome, Tanmay. Do
Hi,
you
Varun.
have, thank
Thank you
you,
so much for having me here.
definitely. Do you have a personal story to share about why you are so passionate about these topics?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me here, Varun. Your What's Your Story series is one of my favorites. I love watching all of the content that you put on your YouTube and Facebook. Also, it's grateful to have such a great panel board. Ms. Akanksha Dubey and Sir Amaya Pradhan. So I've been through their social media pages as well. So it's a lot of information that has gone into me in the past 1 week since I've been following you on Instagram. So, yeah. So what has motivated me to come up on this platform and have my views is since I have been learning music, I have been into the Hindu culture, the followings, the Shastriya art of it. Everything is at the end of the day devoted to the Paramatma, to the ultimate God, to whom we believe is the creator, the destructor, the maintainer of everything. Then you might give him any form, any address him in any way that you want. Learning and reading these scriptures from music had brought me to a phase where I started realizing what we are learning is not exactly what I must have been put in the scriptures. It somehow has been tampered, some way has been twisted, some way has been tweaked, and what we are learning is a very angularized form of a very Mughalized form of what the actual scripture should have been. Having gurus from the Kashmiri background, from where the Exodus happened in the 1990, if you have heard about it, 19th February 1990, uh, it's it's very horrifying to learn from such people who have been a part of such major events in the history, and still they are striving to continue to live up with their culture, spread it across the world in different forms, maybe music, what sort of art it is, or maybe scriptures. Also being a true Maharashtrian, staying in Maharashtra in India, it's like it's a blessing of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and Indruday Samrat Sri Bala Sahib Thackeray that we are blessed with this Bhagwa flag to bear upon our souls and continue to live with it to eternity.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanmay, for sharing your story. We are grateful to have you here. I know you have a lot to add to this conversation, so thank you so much.
Definitely. Sure.
Our next panelist is Amay Pradhan, the co-convener for Overseas Friends of BJP in Germany. And Amay, can you please share what got you so interested in and so passionate about this topic and why you're here?
Yeah. Thank you, Varun, for giving me this opportunity. Firstly, am I audible to everybody?
Yes, there you are.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Amay Pradhan. I'm living in Germany for the past few years, and I've been a student of politics for like last 16 years at least. I've followed 4 Lok Sabha elections, and I've been a BJP supporter for like last 20 years. So since my childhood, I've been here and there affiliated with the politics, and then I've been watching different trends, what have been progress. So my understanding goes from the UPA era, the transformation from UPA era to Modi era. And I've been watching a lot of changes that have been happening. As the previous two panelists rightly pointed out, there have been a lot of flaws in our history, a lot of flaws in our culture, in our society. And this is somehow we are trying to correct it in a different way. And there needs a lot of effort. And it's a collective effort. It's not like you or me or somebody else can do it, or even the government can do it. Everybody has a restriction. Government has a restriction. Above government, there is a court. So, there is a complete flow. There's a complete channel. And then we have to channelize our activities that we go in one flow and we correct all these mistakes. I mean, there are different things which has happened to us that we didn't even realize that it was happening around. I mean, we went to school, we read the history textbooks, which were not correct. For our entertainment, we were watching movies. Movies were giving the wrong messages. We were following several political leaders. I will not name them, but they were also teaching us wrong things. So this was all happening around us, and we never realized it. So the social media thing, which evolved, I would say, probably post 2010 era, which gave a platform where different people had the opportunity to connect to each other from different parts of the world. And they could tell their story, and people could relate, okay, this is happening to me also. This is happening around us. And this was a very good opportunity where people started collaborating with each other. They started sharing their ideas. And this is where the evolution of New India began. And this evolution need not stop now. We just have to take it from one level to another level. And we have to include different generations also into it. I sometimes have a lot of debate with my father, for example. He's also a big fan of politics. But their understanding of politics was slightly different from our understanding, because we have got this internet now. We have got this Google. We can put some keywords, we can find out some information. We've got Twitter, we've got Facebook, YouTube, which tools were missing in the past. So you have to talk to them. You have to take some ideas for them. You have to convince them on few things. It's also important for the younger generation to pass on this information to the upcoming generation also. So we've got kids, and family, we've got nephews, nieces, tell them about what India is, And I've been living in Germany. Sometimes people ask me, hey, you're living abroad, why is it so important for you to talk about the country? Or like, why do you talk about India but living abroad? See, it's like whichever part of the world you live, whichever passport you hold, you are still an Indian. Nobody can change your identity. And the one more thing is, like, you are sitting in US, I'm sitting in Germany, somebody is sitting in other part of the world, maybe Australia, Singapore, I don't care. You are there because India gave you that platform. So your country is important. So be proud of your identity. Never hide that, and just be open. So I would say only that much in my opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Ameji. I completely agree with you that it took me a while to be proud of my heritage, my culture, because of all the messaging that's been put out, like you mentioned, in our education system, like we mentioned in Bollywood. And we're gonna cover all of these different topics in our conversation today. I also wanted to mention that we do have a fourth panelist that's joining in. I'll quickly introduce him, but he's not here, so he won't be able to share his story. His name is Shashank Azad Dixit. He's a rapper with nationalist ideas who always raises his voice for his dharma and stands tall to defend it against all those liberals, pseudo-liberals claiming to be the bearers of secularism in the holy land of Hindus. He has an uber popular Instagram channel that speaks the truth. And that is a short introduction on Shashank. And with that, let's get to our questions. So the first one is for Akanksha. This is kind of what the concepts and the content that you put out on your Instagram channel. So Sanatan Dharma is in essence a gift, is our gift, Indians' gift to this world. Can you dive deeper into some of the concepts, like what is it, and is it accepted, and why are people not accepting it? You're on mute.
Sorry, I went on mute.
That's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. So this is actually a very broad question. Like Sanatan Dharma is a very complex system. It's actually a melting pot of various belief systems, traditions, and practices from various parts of Bharat, the original Bharat that we had. With so many sects and groups, it's hard to have one definition. It's that complex because it developed over time, accumulating the wisdom of ages of nearly even before 7,000 years ago. So there's a lot of information. However, why it's called Sanatan Dharma is because it's the eternal religion. That's what we think about it. Because dharma primarily means duty, which is central to its beliefs and practices. We basically believe that everyone, from the highest god to the lowest living being. In the manifest, creation has been assigned a specific duty and act according to their natural characteristics. So, like a fire's dharma is to burn, the earth's dharma is to hold. And, like whatever the Prakriti is doing is to create. So everyone has to follow their dharma in order to maintain the balance of this universe. Therefore, the scriptures like Vedas, Gita, like all the scriptures repeatedly emphasize the importance of doing your duty and meeting your obligations that come with your professions and status of the family. So that's separate from a human being's dharma. Because human beings are so advanced, and they, like, because of their cognitive cognitive abilities and opposable thumbs and like all the advanced capabilities that we have, we've been able to be at a higher position than other beings in the world. So it's even more important to us. And with dharma being lost, it becomes very difficult. And that's why the earth is suffering, that's why the environment is suffering. So that's why, like, dharma is not just following rituals or traditions, it's basically way of living. Like, if you worship a tree, would you really cut it? You won't, right? You'll respect it and you'll worship it, and you'll only use things that you truly need instead of just like hoarding stuff like we do right now. So that's why dharma is very important to understand. It's a very complex and broad subject, which we can't obviously cover on this call, but I wanted to give a little bit of information. And then there are, like, although like we are from different parts of Bharat and we believe in different things, there are certain things that we all believe in collectively, such as the concept of Atma, reincarnation, moksha, dharma, and karma. And like, if you're a Hindu, to me, like, you have to believe in the authorities of Veda and Bhagavad Gita because they are superior scriptures. But of course, there could be like different viewpoints around this as well, because we do have a lot of different viewpoints. Now, coming back to your question around why there's lack of following or pride, is basically because, first, invasions and the loss of our teachings and scriptures, the original, like, you must have heard about Nalanda University, which is one example. So many universities, so many scriptures were burned, destroyed, so we don't have access to the original timeless teachings, with some of it still intact, but still we have lost a lot. So that's number one reason. Number two reason is Western education. Like, when we were when we were um, introduced to the Western education, they basically wanted to create administrators or clerks out of Indians. So it doesn't really like help you be creative or ask questions. It's mostly around like, this is what you need to learn. This is for to pass an exam. Just learn and go. And because of that, we always have subconsciously or consciously thought of Western teachings or Western people to be superior, right? And we always look for their approval in order to accept or be proud of something that we originally own. For example, yoga, right? Yoga has always been there, but still we got approval and celebration from the West. We didn't really, and when I say we, I'm talking about the majority. I'm sure there are people who have been following it and have been practicing it, but majority of the Indians is what I'm talking about. Uh, try like get proud of something when we get Western validation. Now, I actually created a video around creation of the universe. So there are so many different theories around like how creation happened. And now that how the Western education is talking about it, whether it is that creation happened with a big bang, where and it's a constant cycle of contraction, expansion, that has always been in our scriptures. Like, we've always, like when we talk about time, it's always like a cyclical pattern instead of linear. That's one example. The other one is string theory. We always thought that we always talked about rita or rhythm in the universe, that everything is rhythm. And that's what precisely string theory is. So now that we are getting scientific validations, it's just becoming a little bit more interesting, which honestly is a little unfortunate, because we shouldn't be relying on Western approval. It should be that this is our culture, these are our roots. And not saying that we should blindly believe it, there still should be some scientific component, but we shouldn't look for approval from the West. um, that's my thinking behind it. Did I answer your question, or did I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
go
you
round and round?
definitely. No, you did.
Yeah.
So Ame, how come Hindus,
Yep.
we kind of covered it a little bit and Akanksha did, but what do you think? Like, how come Hindus are against their own culture? Like, what have you seen?
I mean, there are a lot of things. I mean, this goes somewhere around 200 years back when the Britishers acquired India. They started ruling over India. I mean, they realized this, like, getting power in India is something else, but influencing the Indian minds, that is another story. So a lot of researchers from that time Oxford, Cambridge universities, they were doing different researches around India, and they saw that India was a civilized society. It was not dependent on anybody. We had got villages in every part of the country which were like completely developed, and it was well equipped with all the daily necessities what people needed. We had no different demands. So that's why they realized that, okay, to influence this mind, we have to bring some kind of a influencer in the society. That's where they brought this education system. Okay. This education system first began from Calcutta. That's where the den of the leftist and the communist people were. This is where they evolved, and then they spread out to different parts of India. And all this, they set out all this missionary schools, universities, and everything. And they started exploiting things which were not part of Indian culture. Now, not many people know that Sati is not a part of Indian culture. Sati is not part of Hindu culture. But yet we always hear the stories, and we learn this in the school, that Raja Ram Mohan Roy in the British era stopped the Sati culture. There is no Hindu scripture, I think Akanksha ji will agree to me, there is no Hindu scripture which talks about Sati tradition. The only one Sati reference I know from entire history was from Mahabharata.
Yeah.
That was
I was going to say that there was one incident there. Yeah.
There was Madri who went Sati when Pandu died, but Kunti didn't go Sati. That's a paradox over here.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
So talking about that Sati, for example, let's dive a little bit into it. How did that then spread?
Yes, that's a very good question. I mean, we have to understand how did the Sati tradition start in India, and we don't have to go very much back in the history. We can go some years back in the history, and we can find out the answer. Sati tradition basically started when invaders started coming to India. When the invaders started coming to India 600 to 700 years back, they used to go from one village to another village, starting an attack. And when you get outnumbered, when your entire men are fighting in the army, and you get outnumbered, you're slaughtered. What do? They take your women away. They take your women away. So women were left with less options for their dignity. The first thing the women started in this invasion era was a Raksha Bandhan, which is also not a traditional Hindu tradition. They started a Raksha Bandhan saying, if my husband is dead, my Rakhi brother will save me. In today's world, there is no war. So Raksha Bandhan today doesn't make sense. It's only a tradition of trying a Rakhi here and there. But when it started, it had a meaning to it. So there started the Raksha Bandhan, it started. So when women are being taken away and they have been exploited as sex workers in harems and different things, so they had nothing left in their life. So Sati was the only dignity, what was left for them. And that's where the Sati tradition got. And where did the Sati, actually people don't know where the Sati was happening. Sati was happening in South India. No, it was not happening. Because South India had lesser impact of invasion. Now South India has a bigger impact of invasion of the left ideology. But at that time, there was no that bigger impact of invasion. Sati was happening in Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh and all this side, where there was the bigger impact of the Mughal Empire. So that's where the Sati started. I mean, we saw the Johar example in the Padmavati movie, where I think 1,600 women, along with the Rani Padmavati, took Johar because they lost the war. There was also a big example in the, I think Tanmay spoke about the Maratha Empire. So I think in the 17th century or the 18th century, when we lost the last battle of Panipat, right? So in that battle of Panipat, Maratha army was carrying women and children also along with them. And this was the last infantry which they had. And when they lost this battle, the Afghan army took all the women along with them back to Afghanistan. And this is what today the Balochistan people in Pakistan are claiming. We are not Pakistani, we are the Marathas which Afghanistan took from us and they brought us to Balochistan. So we are not traditionally Pakistani. So there is an insurgence movement going on in Balochistan, which is quite famous. So this is what they were happening, and this is why the Sati tradition started in India. It was forced upon. Wow. Hindu tradition were never regressive. They were always progressive. And the West has realized it.
And in fact, ours is the only religion that not only treat women as equal, but actually treat women as superior to men. Because everything is made up of Purush and Prakriti. Prakriti is, in earthly terms, the feminine energy, which makes like creation and energy and mind possible. So we have been the worshippers of Durga since ages. Like we've like no other, like tell me any religion that does that. So for a community like that, there's no possibility that they would have a process like, or a system like Sati, just to be biased towards women or to cause harm towards women.
Wow, Ameji, you mentioned about the Raksha Bandhan. So
yep.
Just a few days ago, my Raksha Bandhan from my sister broke, and it's lying on the table over there. Maybe it happened for a reason, I don't know, but that was very interesting because I did not
yep.
know about the Raksha Bandhan tradition.
So, I mean, just coming to back to the point, I mean, just to complete this Sati thing, when this India-Pakistan, the separation of the two countries were taking place in 1947. There was another time, I think this is a documentary which is very well available on YouTube. You can see the partition documentary from BBC, where they have clearly showed that inside the Punjab province of Pakistan, the Pakistanis started attacking the Sikh family. And they started abducting the Sikh women from Pakistan. So at that time, the Sikh father had to behead their daughter. This is even scary to imagine. But this is, I'm not saying from anything, this is BBC is saying it. So if you don't trust my word, it is there. Right? So that's where, I mean, this is even 70 years before we can see this happen. So you can imagine what was the situation 500 or 600 years ago. Right. I mean, Akanksha ji mentioned about the Nalanda University. I mean, we all know there were like 90 lakh books in Nalanda University which were burnt in the 13th century. Very, very few people are aware of this. And maybe today we are spreading this information from all these years we didn't know. This were like all handwritten scriptures. Okay, there was no printing press at that time. Printing press was it was born in Germany only in 15th century, not before that. So those scriptures were burned. Bihar is basically a word which is coming from Bihar. It's a Buddha Bihar, where all Buddhist people and scientists were there, who were doing all the research, who were documenting everything. They just came and they burned everything. Wow. Okay. Then the education system told you about the caste system, right? Now in Hinduism, there is no caste system. This nobody knows, right? This nobody knows. We have Varnas. That's called the Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, right? But how were the Varnas decided? Varnas was decided is like, I am from Maharashtra, right? So we do this Janeyu. In my family tradition also, we do a Janeyu. And Janeyu is done at a very younger age, 7 or 8 probably. And end of this ceremony, there is one ceremony where the boy who has attended the sanskar from his family goes to Kashi. Now, I don't know how many people today know why this tradition of going to Kashi. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll hear you.
So this going to Kashi tradition was like, after the Janeyu, the boy will go to the Gurukul. And in this Gurukul, as per his capabilities, the Guru will decide what he will become. If he was a scholar, if he was a researcher, he would become a Brahmin. And as a Brahmin, he would study more into yoga, into Ayurveda, and different traditions related to science. If he was a good fighter, he would become a Kshatriya. If he was good in trade and business, he would become a Brahmin. And Shudra is not untouchable. Untouchability is also not part of it. Shudra means in service industry. And today, if you see, 70% of the world is working in the service industry. That's the biggest industry what we have today. And it was the same thing in the past. So Shudras were never untouchable. How did the untouchability started? I have my own theory, but that is not validated. You know, and they picked out characters from the past. The leftist historians picked out the characters in the past to glorify there was a casteism in the Hinduism from the earliest era. So they went to Mahabharata. And from Mahabharata, they picked out Karna. And Karna's story, they distorted like anything to spread it like, okay, there was a casteism even from the Mahabharata era. They did it. And they put everything into your history books. This is what you were taught. This is not only you were taught, your forefathers were also taught the same thing.
No, that's an interesting point. You brought up the
Now, there are a lot of... Yeah. I think Akanksha was talking about getting a validation of Hindu traditions from US and US universities, right? So this is also happening. US has recognized a lot of things about India, but they are not vocal about it, because if they become vocal about it, they will lose their dominance. Now in 2018, I was just browsing through YouTube. I came across a National Geographic show. It was called One Strange Rock. I've got my own interest in documentaries and all this kind of things. So I just saw this series. Will Smith, the famous Hollywood actor, was the host of this show. And it was based on the research done by NASA. The very first episode I saw, and I realized this is exactly the same thing which is written in Hinduism. It's exactly the same. I mean, if someone knows Hinduism, you can watch that series, you can realize who is Shiva, who is Vishnu, who is Brahma. And this is related to the Big Bang Theory, which Akanksha ji again mentioned. You can find the reference of Samudra Manthan also into it. You can find the reference of the things which came out of the Samudra Manthan. And this is NASA validating it in a different format, of course, not in a religious text format. But either you take our religious text or you take the findings of NASA. Ultimately, it's the same thing.
Right.
And after this series was completed, Will Smith came to India. And he went from every big temple he traveled. He did big abhishekas to Kedarnath, Badrinath, and all these temples in Uttarakhand and all these places. People didn't realize, what was happening around. Why is he suddenly become so sanghi? there was a big debate, why he has become so sunny, why is he traveling to so many temples, why is he doing that Abhishek? You can Google this photo, you can find out with all this lot of flowers and hearts and everything in his
Yeah, yeah,
body. Yeah? So I told many people that this is the only reason why he came to India, because somebody must have explained him that what you showed in that show is exactly what Hinduism is.
yeah.
It's
Wow.
totally science. It's not mythology. The first thing the left historians told you, the Ramayana and Mahabharata is a mythology.
Mm.
When there are so many historical evidences available today from the scientific point of view, which are validating. So, for example, NASA has also recognized the uh, Setu, Ram Setu. Yeah, there are pictures available. These satellite pictures are available. They're saying they're 7,000 years old. We can have a debate how old it is, but they are still validating it.
Mhm, mhm. We have all talked about the education system really quickly. So there's a question from the audience. So let's take that question. I feel like it's very relevant. And Ameji, thank you so much for sharing so much knowledge. I mean, I wish we could go on for the whole 3-4 hours and just talk about this because you have so much, and then I know Akanksha ji has so much. But I also want to get to Tanmay. Um, so
Sure.
Tanmay, there's a question from the audience, and
Yes.
I want you to answer that. So this is about the education system. They said everyone is talking about the education system, but what can we do to change the content that's within our education system? How can we go about bringing that change?
Okay. So first of all, our education system is not ours. It
Mm,
has been imposed on us by our rulers, by our very previous rulers, the Britishers. When they left a whole chain of education that needs to be followed since the child is born till the time he gets a job. But if you read our scriptures, if you were to deep dive in what we are, what the culture is, I mean, I sometimes feel Russia is the one which actually followed our tradition. Russia was known as a father country. I mean, they used to send their children as per their interest and what they're good at, actually. So that they made them learn what they want. And we as Hindus, we do not follow our scriptures. I mean, in schools and colleges, I mean, as per the Indian constitution, there are these acts in which Hindus directly can't teach their children what has been written in their scriptures. I mean, there are laws which says as in 90s, if I'm not wrong, Arya Samaj, the committee, had to prove that they are not a Hindu organization and they are a non-profit body, and they are not actually teaching these Hindu scriptures and actually just there to help people. So we are stopped by, I mean in the history there were invasions and there were rulers, and there have been so many changes that have been uh, purposely put to us. But in order to get what we were actually, we need to follow scriptures. For example, Bhagavad Gita. I mean, there are so many lessons to take out of it. How you should live your life, what should be the motive. I mean, how you should think. I mean, there are so many things to take out of it, but we don't see anything that is getting into the track where we should follow things. So everything is everywhere.
So Akanksha ji, what do you think? How can we bring about this change in our education?
I do think, like everything that happened in India, it also has to be a people movement, right? Um, Once, like, for example, like let's look at the Ram Mandir incident, right? It was a people's movement, and that's why it got successful. We believed in something, we fought for it, we were united, and we made the change. So it's as simple like education system. Like the more we speak up, the more it's going to get into the ears of the government. And I think there's been like some attempts in at least changing the history books, like, or correcting the history books for the right word. um, and that's what I think like we should be doing. It should be a people movement. It should, like, we should unitedly raise our voice against these things, and it should reach the government, and ultimately the government has to make these calls. And before that, we need to choose the right government also, who hears us.
Right. Right. So that was a fantastic question. Thank you, Prithviraj Devnath, for asking that question. So we have talked about this is the Hindu exodus. So I want to
One point I would like to add to
go
the
ahead.
discussion. Changing the history book is not that easy. Yeah? That as we are speaking about it, I think the current government has been in the office for the last 6 years, now 6.5 years almost. Okay. But still they have not got any success in changing the history book because if we have a law system here, okay, and everything which has to be changed can be challenged in court. And there in the court, this can be like another Ram Mandir case, 20, 25, 30 years. You don't know how long it's going to run. And then the change will be
500
brought
years.
to the society. Okay. So it's not that easy. I think we have to find some alternate ways. I mean, as Akanksha ji rightly said, it's got to be a public movement that we educate each other and we inform each other about the right thing. So from the academic point of view, it's going to be a very tough job.
So right now, a lot of the information is available online, right? So it's basically kind of self-knowledge and.
I will tell you one small example. Not many people are aware of this example. In India, I think most of us have been to Goa, right?
Mm-hmm.
But people don't talk about the Goa infusion theory. How the Portuguese did the atrocities on Hindus living in Goa. They used to make you stand in front of the cannon and they used to say, if you don't convert right now, we blow this cannon. Okay. Wow. And the man who was in charge of this project, who was executing this order, is known as a saint in India. Wow. He's known as a saint in India. I'm not going to name him because I don't want to make your show any controversial or something. There are many educational institutions in India in his name. Wow. And his dead body is being worshipped in Goa as a saint.
Jeez. There's so much.
I mean, Varun, you're sitting right now over here. If I put a sword on your neck and if I tell you, convert your religion, will you accept me? No, you will not accept me. Nobody will accept me. But this happened to us.
Yeah.
And nobody is saying.
Wow. Man. There's so much to unpack. There's so much to uncover. I mean, this is great stuff, guys. I really want to do a second episode or something else on the true Indian history because there's so much to talk about there. So let's dive into the Hindu exodus. Tanmay, I'm going to ask you this question. Can you talk about kind of like, let's give a historical perspective really quickly. I know this can go on forever and ever, but really quickly, like give a summarized version of what's happened to us. And then I want to talk about like what's going on right now. And that's the point of this conversation. So, but before we get to what's going on right now, let's give that historical perspective. So Tanmay, go ahead.
Sure. So I'll start by telling you a story, which is of my own clan. So my full name is Tanmay Chaudhary. So the surname Chaudhary, it is not actually Chaudhary. So I'll take you to the history of it. So Chaudharys, if you have read about Sikhism, there were 10 gurus. So the third or fourth guru, who was Guru Arjan Dev. So there was a sect who used to worship him, who used to help him in his daily activities, in his daily chorus. So they were worshippers of Shri Krishna. So that sect, they had these names. It was Chaudhary. And since these exodus that they have been happening, I'll take you how it is being related to this, that it has been named to Chaudhary now. So, I mean, what this exodus has done to us is far beyond what we think of only conversions or cultural changes or scripture changes. So, now speaking about the exodus, the last one, which was in 1990s, 19th January 1990, of Kashmiri Hindus, in which more than 3.5 lakh Kashmiri Hindus were asked to leave from the land of Kashmir. So, I mean, what led to this exodus? I mean, why were people asked to leave from their own holy land, where there was a time the Kashmir from the very beginning was under the Karkota Raja, which was established by King uh, Lalita Parammuktaditya, if I'm not wrong, Lalitaditya, if I'm. So it was a land completely of Hindus. But in the 7th century, there was this first invasion that happened, and after that century, after the 7th century, there were many invasions that happened. But the one in 11th century by Mahmud Ghaznavi, that was the most terrible. Uh, the result of which, if I'm not wrong, the Martin Sun Temple. If you have been to the images of that temple, it was a huge infrastructure, an edifice which, I mean, is absolutely impossible to human architecture during that time. Now that temple is nothing but in ruins. It The Hindu Kush mountains, I mean, which spread from, I mean, which go till Afghanistan and this, and then they come back to Kashmir. So that whole land was of Hindus. So that Aryan Dravidian theory that is said that that the Aryans crossed that Hindu Kush mountains and then they came in here. So that theory is debatable, because if you see that there are some changes, I mean, there are differences in the Aryans and Dravidian DNAs till date. But what is different is we see here is that every exodus, they say there are 7 exodus that have happened of the Kashmiris from the 7th century. The last one was the most lethal one. If I'm not wrong, when this is Temur, he entered India. He entered, one of his army entered from the very north and one entered from the northwest, if I'm not wrong, from Punjab or Rajasthan, and that way they entered. They they reached Delhi, but by their way through, they killed around, if I'm not mistaken, 1.5 lakh people. So that exodus, every time, every exodus has seen at least 1 lakh of people cutthroat, decapitated, and their janus collected, and their janus being collectively burnt, their skulls taken out, and a mountain being formed of their skulls, and it has been glorified. So definitely every exodus has left scars on different communities which are still living in India. So for example, the Kashmiri Hindus, which were asked to live in the 90s, have spread across India. For example, many of them are in Maharashtra, many are in the south. They are still struggling to get back to their ancestral homes, to where they belong. They want to worship, because every Kashmiri home there has a mandir right then and there. So they still miss that culture that they had, the Sanatan Dharma that they used to follow, the overall vibe it was in Kashmir. Now it's not, it does not exist, unfortunately. So I mean, they are scared now. When is this coming down from north to the south? Because never things have been good for anyone, the victims who have been through these things. The things are getting only worse.
Yeah. Let's take a question from our panelists. Ruba asked, who is a terrorist according to Hinduism? May?
That's a very good question. Everybody who is into some kind of a crime is a terrorist. I mean, there are 2 types of terrorists that we have to identify. That's very important. One, who is violent. We know he's a terrorist. And the second one is the intellectual terrorist, who's providing the intellectual platform to become a terrorist. So both are equally dangerous. I think we only identify one sort of terrorist, the other sort of terrorist is not identified. I mean, just in 2016, when the Buran Wani was killed in the crossfire in Kashmir, immediately a journalist from India said, a son of a headmaster is killed. I mean, if I am a criminal, I'm a criminal. It doesn't care what my father does or what my mother does or my family was doing in the past. Yeah. So this is what the intellectual terrorists are doing to our society. That they are giving platform, they are providing a shield to these people. And this is happening because they are controlling all the universities.
Right.
And that's where the left ecosystem was built.
Akanksha ji?
Yeah, I want to add to this. This is actually very well explained by me. We always think about, the violent terrorists who are there, like out there, and we know that they're bad, stuff like that. But the urban Naxals are really the biggest issue right now because they're not, because they are under the garb of leftists or worst case liberals, right? Liberals, it's supposed to be a good thing, but it's really becoming the dominance of your views over the world, which is not liberal at all. It's like the literal opposite of being liberal, and that's what's happening. And what's going on is, see, like the origin of liberalism started with the Catholics and Protestants, right? In the history, like when Protestants wanted to challenge the authority of the Catholics, and they wanted a more liberal or more accepting view to be out there in the world. That's how it started. And the USP was playing the victim card. And it wasn't like fake playing the victim card that time, but they were actually the victims that time because they were being prosecuted for having different views. So that was actually the case in the historical past, which is now being used in order to manipulate people. And it is a false victim card. So exodus has happened in India, and we've clearly been the victims here. But do we play the victim card? No. There are two reasons. One, we always have been proud of our ancestry. So let's say, like, let's take an example of Ramayana. Ramayana, like, so much bad happened with Bhagwan Ram, but we don't talk about that. We talk about his victory on evils. So that's how Hindus are wired. We talk about our victories over our challenges, over the difficulties that we have faced. But now is the time when the victim card needs to be used, because that's been exploited by the other parties a lot more, like, basically, like, they're monopolizing. And that's what's causing the left or the liberal media to be anti-Hindus. If you think about, I actually saw this documentary on Netflix, which was very interesting, The Social Dilemma. So basically, when you are interested in a particular subject, social media makes you go into this very, like, thick bubble of that kind of thinking. So if I'm right wing, I'm only going to see the content that right wingers post, and if I'm the left winger, that's what I'll see. That's how it works, and that's how it makes profits, and it makes its benefits. So this type of, like, polarization is very dangerous. And the issue is, to Amir's point, like, the liberals or the leftists have all the authority right now in India to make the changes. So that's why, like, it's so powerful and it's so hard to fight with. But these are the things that we need to continuously think about and continuously challenge. Now, like, look at the Tanishq ad that happened. Honestly, like, if you look at the ad very objectively, there was not, like, it was not offensive or it wasn't outrageous. But because this type of, like, subtle narrative is being implanted in people's mind for so long, for decades. Like, I remember watching this movie Mehuna. That was the first time I was like, what, like, they're saying that the other party is right and we are wrong, like, how is that working out? So, that was the first time I questioned it, and then it just got worse and worse and worse. uh, there's so many, like, theories out of there that there's external funding, there's, like, because the other parties are much more united in their objectives than we are. We are basically, like, just seeking life and, like, living life, experiencing life, meditation, yoga. So you're not, like, politically organized as well as the other parties. That's why, like, we suffer a little bit in that aspect. So to that point, uh, the reason why this narrative is so strong is because the parties that hold that narrative are very influential. right now on the social media, but it's changing a little bit. Happened with the Tanishq ad, like so many right wingers objected towards it, they had to take it down. The apology was really like lame, but still there was something that came out which wasn't possible maybe like a year ago, right? So things are changing, but it needs like we constantly have to work towards it.
That is very interesting. You know, that social dilemma, that reminds me of my PhD. I kept focusing on that one topic, going narrow and narrow and narrow. And that's what the social media does for us, is just
Yeah,
keep focusing on that one topic.
that's why it's very important to follow, and it's for the leftists also. It's very important to follow people who do not agree with you. You need to not be in that bubble, and be like aware of like what others are also thinking and what other opinions are out there, so that you're not really trapped, and then you're trying to like find a reason and try to like look for truth. Because a lot of times, like they say that social media, false news travel 6 times faster than the real news, which is so dangerous. That's why like it affects elections, it affects like it causes riots, like all of that is happening because of that. Even though it has good like it has created good in the society by causing that awareness, but we have to be very careful about it. Like it goes for both right wingers and left wingers. Just be like open to other opinions as well, so that you are trying to like be objective and trying to find the truth and looking for facts instead of just theories.
Right. Hey, Amay, go ahead. I know you.
I would just like to pick one word out of what Akanksha was telling. And this is a very good example. How do we fall for wrong things? I mean, it is not left wingers versus right wingers. Right? We are not right wingers. That's the first thing. Right, who is a right winger? Because in Europe, the right wingers are the one who are also extremists. Okay, the right wingers are the one who does not allow other people to enter their country. They want their dominance. So they are equally violent. So left is also violent, right is also violent. So they made us right wingers. They made us look right wingers, and everybody
Yes.
started believing that you're a right
Yes.
winger. You're not a right winger.
You're not.
Just
Yeah.
because they call you right winger, it doesn't make you right winger. And people fall for these narratives.
This is such a great point. I always talk about that like even the current government, I mean, the type of attacks that happen to them with no consequences whatsoever, that is actual liberalism. Like, how is that conservative? Like you say anything you want to say, nothing happens ever to you. False news like get circulated like wildfire. Nothing ever happens. So how is that conservative? And look at like what happened in Kangana's case, for example. She spoke against the government. Her building was demolished. That is conservative. Like that is what right winger or like conservatism is. So we have to like be very careful about these definitions too, to Amay's point.
So let's take a question. So Sidra Ali Anwar has a comment. You guys mentioned that the hate towards idolaters is deeply embedded in their book of faith. Kindly mention in which chapter you have found such kind of hate and in which holy book. Anybody want to take this question?
Which kind of a hate? I did not get the question.
Just kindly mention in which chapter you have found such kind of hate and in which holy book.
Okay, let's get this straight. I was reading one more question which came up, which was asking about why talk nonsense about the holy book of Quran. Yeah? Let me tell this very, very clearly to everybody that Hinduism is the only religion which is the most accepting religion in the entire world. Even when we talk about Islam, there are 72 sects of Islams living in India. You will not find this in any Islamic country also. Even the Islamic countries are divided into Shia and Sunni. The Iran and Iraq is a Shia country, whereas the Saudi and the other UAE country are the Sunni countries. They're fighting against each other. In Germany, I've met a few Ahmadiyya Muslims. Now, Ahmadiyya Muslims live as a refugee coming out of Pakistan. So I said, like, why are you a refugee? Because you are a Muslim. So they said, like, no, Ahmadiyyas are not recognized as Muslim in Pakistan. Because it's a big crime if they call themselves Muslims on their passport or somewhere else. That's the biggest crime. You can go to jail. The same Ahmadiyya Muslims come to India every year. They have a jalsa in Kalyan, and we allowed it. The first mosque was built in the 8th century in Kerala by a Hindu ruler because the Arab travelers were coming via Kerala by the sea route to do trade, and they said like, okay, to pray we give you religion. When the invasion happened in Iran, which was a Zoroastrian country, a Parsi country, the Persia, right? The Persians came to India, we accommodated. The Jews came to India, we accommodated. The Buddhists from Tibet, they came to India, we accommodated. We took everybody along. There was no hate in India. But when you constantly start attacking me, what do I do? Do I not defend myself? That's the whole idea of the communal hatred which is going on. I mean, let's take the situation, post 2014, the minorities in India have got so aggressive against the government that they've started targeting Hindus. They are targeting Hindus not only in India, they're targeting Hindus also abroad. They're doing it here in Germany. Wherever there is a Hindu program, they will go and protest that why Hindus, such a violent community from India, is allowed to do a program here. They are doing the same thing in US. If you read the news, it's happening all around. They're doing it in UK. They're doing it everywhere. Why? The hatred is not coming from me. Hatred is coming from you. And if I am defending myself, it doesn't make me wrong.
Okay, let's take another question. So we mentioned the caste system and the Vedas. Again, Sidra Ali mentions Rig Veda says that these Varnas clearly clarifies Shudras are to serve others. That's
a service industry that we said, right? Banking is a service industry. Insurance is a service industry. IT is a service industry. So serve doesn't mean that they were untouchables and they had to do something. The service industry was different definition. I mean, in ancient times, there were like palaces. There are different kind of jobs in palaces. There were kingdoms. And India was a victim to invasion. Why? Because we were civilization. We were people that engrossed in different activities. The people, the industrialists, India and China were the biggest exporters till the 17th century. We were the two biggest economies in the world. That's why the invasion happened in both China and India. Right? So, people were not only the fighters. People were not doing only military. They had other jobs to do. So that's why people were not equipped. So they got outnumbered in different villages. And that's how the invasion happened.
Also, I'm not sure if Rig Ved says something like that about Shudras. I have not personally seen it, and I've not seen that, like, if someone can give me the source, maybe we can look into it. But basically, like, to my understanding, Vedic people were more about Varnas, to Amay's point as well, rather than caste system. There was actually no caste system. They were more about like the different racial features of different tribes and like groups, and that's how like they used to basically distinguish between the different groups. So that's what used to happen in Vedic systems. And like if we think about caste system, right, like for a second, objectively, I think it's like apprenticeship, right? Like you learn from someone who is skilled in that profession. That was the purpose. Another purpose was that one group doesn't have monopoly on different things. So a Brahmin who is known for his wisdom won't have the political power, because if they have the political power, they can't make wise decisions. They'll be like absorbed by greed and all types of like negative things. Similarly, anyone who is interested in money or business is not a ruler, because the ruler is supposed to, like, Kshatriyas are supposed to fight for their country. They're not supposed to make money. So that was the reason behind it. And honestly, like caste system, I'm not totally against the caste system. I'm against the preferential treatment. it shouldn't be like that one caste is better than the others. They all have their own things, and they all have their roles and responsibilities, and we should look at it like that. Of course, like with the time, like everything gets corrupt, so it did get corrupt, and there are like groups that suffered because of that, but that wasn't the intention at all. In fact, you have several references in our scriptures, in Mahabharata or Ramayana, where there was no like distinguish, like there was no bias towards any caste. Look at this Shabri example. Bhagwan Ram like ate Shabri, like she was lower caste, as well as the people who helped him with everything, like in surviving the forest, they all were of lower caste. Like he actually like hung out with them a lot. So it wasn't like the concept of untouchability and the concept of one caste being superior to other wasn't there. It just got corrupted with time. So that's what we need to like understand about this whole system. And to and I know like it could be a little controversial if I say this, but I'll say this, that it has actually helped in the unity of communities. And that's why, like, that's one of the reasons why Hinduism has survived even after so many invasions. Like, look at any other country. Egypt used to, like, Egypt is like totally overpowered by a certain community. Like, that didn't happen with India, even though we went through a much severe invasion. And that's because the community to people in which they belong was more important than their lives, so that helped them stay intact within those communities. And of course, like now in the modern world, it doesn't relate that much, because to like Amay also said, like 70% of people are in the service industry, so we are all in that industry, and that's what it is. A Brahmin is not really a Brahmin because they're not practicing any Brahminical activities. And similarly with the Kshatriya, like whoever is a soldier is a Kshatriya. Doesn't matter what they were born into. And even like I remember in the Mahabharata times also, there was it wasn't like the rulers weren't selected in the pre-Mahabharata times. The rulers weren't selected based on birth. They actually, like, it was based on their capability and their skills and the merit. So we were always a merit based system, and the caste was just an identification with the profession that you are in. That's all. It wasn't like one thing was superior than the others.
Then,
One more thing we have to realize that how the caste system started. I mean, when the invasion started in India, the gurukuls were stopped. People stopped sending their kids to gurukul. So from there on, what was the profession of the father, what was passed on to the son, and so on, and that became the caste. Son of a Brahmin became a Brahmin, son of a Kshatriya became a Kshatriya. And similarly, in India, we talk about the OBCs. Yeah, now the Bihar election is coming. It's a very hot topic in Bihar regarding the OBC community, the Mandal Commission, and everything. So who are OBC? OBCs were sutars, the carpenters, the kumbhars, and the lohars, and everything. So they were like professions transferred from one generation to another generation, and then it got recognized as a caste. It was not. It was never a caste.
okay, so we talk about caste system, and we mentioned that the intent was there.
I would like. So sorry, Varun, to interrupt. I would like to add something. When it comes to caste system, there are so many things which we are not told. Maybe history, maybe media. But do you know, every year there are hundreds of. I won't call them Dalits, but let's. Because I don't think that that's the right way to address them. The low caste people, they are trained to be Brahmins. They're trained
Yeah.
to worship the god.
Yeah.
No one tells us that. So is it written in our Vedas, in our scriptures, that only a Brahmin can worship the gods?
Yeah.
He can only do puja. He's only allowed to do the Ganpati ceremony or the Visarjan ceremony, the pujas, or whatever, Durga puja, whatever it might be. It's not written. Like anyone, if he knows it, he can do it. If he's fine with it.
Exactly. I don't
So
remember
it's
the number, but even in the Ram Mandir, they are appointing pandits from all caste systems. They are doing that.
in
So
fact in the Ram Mandir committee, there
yeah,
is a Muslim who's going to be a part of the Ram Mandir committee. So that's the secularism that we're talking about.
yeah,
So it's so misinterpreted, mistaught to us, that it's the only higher caste that has been ruling is the Brahminical patriarchy that's being followed. It's not always that. It's not that we see. For example, Amaya has rightly addressed in 70% of the service industry. I mean, are we being hired looking at a caste? I mean, it's all about merit. So it has always been about merit. It has always, if you're good at something, if I'm a warrior, if I like to fight, then I'd be Kshatriya. If I'm good at spiritual, if I'm being good with some other things, then I'll be a Brahmin. So it's so mistaught to us. And in today's generation, the left is, for example, the leftists, they want to hype things up when there's the term Dalit involved. For example, yesterday I was checking the news. So I saw this in Kerala. A Dalit girl was bitten by a snake and she died. But in the headline, it was so well explained. A Dalit girl bit by a snake died on spot. I mean, does the snake know what's a caste? Is that the right way of addressing anyone? I mean, someone has lost their life. Come on, you can't just things on these cases.
That's very interesting. So we talked.
Dalit were highly educated. These scheduled castes were highly educated. This is
True.
documented in libraries in London. Okay, Britishers knew that. In 18th century, the Shudras were the highly educated people in India because they were provided education to become eligible to do several services. Okay, where this untouchability came, the untouchability came from the leather industry, which the invaders brought to India. Okay. The leather industry could have been in India before, but the scale of the leather industry was magnified under this rule. And one more thing I have to clarify, there was some question coming here. It's talking about Ashoka. Yeah? Now, if you see Mahabharata, there were clear rules how to fight a war. Only a Kshatriya will come to fight a war. Okay. Brahmins, Vaishya, Shudra, they were not involved. You do your own job. Fighting is left to Kshatriya. Kshatriyas will come to the battlefield, they will fight. War had timings from sunrise to sunset. Okay. One person will fight to one person. No other person will intervene in between. No treachery. These were the rules of fighting a war. This is what the Hinduism was following all along. In the entire history of Hinduism, there is only one man who has broke all these rules. Okay, only one man in the entire history has broke all these rules, and he's Ashoka. He broke all these rules, what Hinduism taught. And after his war, he realized, okay, I did something wrong. Now I should leave Hinduism and become Buddhist.
No, so actually, this is something that I had been thinking about too. I don't know any of you follow True Indology on Twitter,
Yeah, everybody
but
does.
True,
I
true.
I kind of like blindly follow him because he knows his stuff. True Indology actually mentioned that like when Ashoka was fighting the Kalinga War, he was already a Buddhist. And we have been taught that he, after fighting all the wars, like he did everything wrong as a Hindu, and then he realized, oh, Hinduism is bad, so I'll become Buddhist and take a peaceful path. But that's not the truth. He was already a Buddhist when he was fighting all these wars. So that's something that people should know. It actually blew my mind.
Yeah, and then leftist people took Ashoka as a symbol of peace, and we have the Ashoka chakra in our Indian flag, which is right behind you, which I can see on the screen.
So then,
So,
okay, hold on. We talked about the
go ahead.
intent of the caste system, but there is still something to be said about the impact, meaning what's going on currently and how, like we talked about the Dalits being, purposely maybe attacked or, I think there was a question about that too. So I kind of want to bring that question up. Let me see. Oh yeah. So it says, so yeah, let's talk about the impact of the caste system and what's going on right now in India, and what can we do to mitigate that, not allow that to happen again. So, Ameji, if you want to talk about that.
See, as far as I know, the caste system has no bigger impact today in our society. I mean, a lot of people from the Dalit community, as it is called, I mean, you should not address them as a Dalit community, but it's okay. So they're also voting for the Narendra Modi government. So everybody is looking at what things are happening on the ground. And Tanmay is from Maharashtra. I'm also from Maharashtra. So the entire movement of Ambedkar changing his religion to Buddhism, and then the scheduled caste people accepting Buddhism started from Maharashtra. Right? A lot of Maharashtrian people from the scheduled caste community, they became Buddhists. But till date, if you go to their colonies, where they are like in larger numbers, so probably I can speak for Mumbai and maybe not so well knowledgeable about other cities. In Mumbai, if you see, they celebrate all Hindu festivals. Navratri is coming from within 2 days. You will see all Navratri pandals in their areas. They are all worshipping Navratri. Now they are doing Hindu tradition. They have got Hindu names, but on paper they are Buddhist. I mean, there is no temple in India which is objecting any caste people to enter or do any sort of rituals. Okay. Now, I was talking about that show which was like the Will Smith was doing. It shows that the stone is the pillar of the earth. That is why we worship the stone. And people tell you कि पत्थर में भगवान नहीं है, भगवान दिल में है. That's a lie. If there was no stone, there was no patthar, there would have been no life. That is why we offer water and milk on the shivling. Nobody is restricted from offering water and milk to shivling. Everybody can do it. So there is no caste system. They use the caste system for their vote bank politics. That we have to identify, and then we have to help. I mean, when this Black Lives Matters was going on some months ago in the United States, I was quite sure that this is going to come to India, because all the black movements run by leftists in the United States are exactly replicated in India sooner or later.
True.
They did Black Panthers in 1972 in the United States. You can read it in the history, Google. And in 1973, they started Dalit Panthers in Maharashtra.
Tanmay, I know you have something to add to this.
Yeah, so I mean, what my point is, you were oppressed some 100, 200, 300 years back. It's not now that you've been oppressed. It's the other side now. So if you see, every now and then you even get news of the higher caste, the Brahmins also being killed, their women being raped. But does that matter to you? What the media hypes to you is in the form of a Dalit. This happened to a Dalit. No doubt, that happened in history. That happened in Maharashtra a long time back. And that was at peak, I mean, during the Maratha Empire. And what Baba Sahib Ambedkar did, I really respect him for that. That was a need for the day. And if we see the statistics in India, there are around 300 million Dalits. I mean, who are not Hindus, but they follow Hinduism. But on paper, as I rightly said, they are Hindus. I mean, as per the culture, but on paper, they're Buddhists. So, just copying what is happening in the West, just for the sake of vandalizing things and burning things apart and just trying to name it as Brahminical supremacy, the patriarchy that's going through women will end the Hindu Rashtra, it's completely wrong. The understanding of why things are going wrong, that needs to be told well to us. I mean, we are completely being taught history, which is no longer happening now. It is like, oh, you guys did this in past, so you guys are still doing it. But we were also oppressed. Even we have faced something. Are we being told every time about that? Do we clip about that every now and then? Does the media hype that? No, it is not, and it will never be hyped, because that propaganda will never happen to you, because you are in majority. And you are not like in ultra majority, you are just some 100 million more. Does that mean the past was good with only you? No.
Yeah, and to add to that, see, like when we talk about caste system, like I'm talking about relevance in today's society, right? When we talk about caste system, or whether we talk about secularism, right? What it make, like, to me, that is, you know, basically making sure that the government is not being preferential towards a certain group compared to the other. Because I mean, I can have my own opinion, right? You can have my own opinion. Doesn't make a difference. Yeah, we can be casteist, we can be racist, we can be, I'm just like giving the worst example. We can be whatever in our space. That doesn't change anything. That doesn't make any difference. Yeah, we'll write something on social media, but that's it. What makes a difference is that the government needs to be neutral and shouldn't give preferential treatment to anyone. And let's like, because I hear about Brahminical patriarchy all the time. It just like I'm a like from a traditional perspective, I am in that caste system. I'm a Brahmin. Like I'm not a practicing maybe, like, and doesn't make sense in today's world. But growing up, I never had any advantage of being in that caste system. Actually, like, you know, like either I'm like trying to like get into colleges or I'm trying to get a job, no advantage whatsoever. So what are we really complaining about? I have no idea. My brother, who is also like, we get same caste because he's my brother, he was a brilliant student. He could have, like, you know, like he actually had to like skip a year to get into IIT. And what he was getting, like I mean, IIT is anyway very difficult. So he could get into that system. He passed the exam, but he couldn't get the branch that he was getting to because of the reservation system. I'm being very blunt right now. So yes, like, and I mean, as Brahmins, we have no privileges at all. We are actually being disadvantaged. So I don't understand the type of hype that we have against Brahmins or any upper caste people. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no extra privileges that are given to us by the government. In fact, we are always disadvantaged, if not worse. So this hype needs to really stop. It's just
So it's
completely
like
fake.
now we are being oppressed. So it's
Exactly,
now
we are being totally oppressed. We, no matter how hard we study, we can't get into any good institution or get government job. You have to be extraordinarily capable in order to get a spot in any of these institutions. How is that not biased towards us? And I'll tell you, because, like, you know, like it's like I have grown up in that community. Most of them are poor. Like, it's not like we're rich and like we have like this whole legacy behind us, so we don't really need the system to support us. Most of us are poor, and we do need the system to support us, but there's no system to support it because of these narratives. So really, like, people need to think about it. I'm not trying to like create divisions. I'm trying to basically say that the hype that is created is not relevant in today's society. Everyone, what works is money, right? If you have the money, you have the privileges. If you don't have the money, you don't have the privileges. That's the divide now. So anyone who doesn't have the money, the government should support them, because they don't have the tools and the resources to be successful. So it needs to be very and it goes across religions, it goes across caste, like it goes across like all the different groups that we have. If you don't have money, that's who you need to support.
All right, so we have our fourth panelist, Shashank Bhai. Thank you for joining us. I know you were tied up with something, but you were able to make it here. So I'm so glad you were able to join this discussion.
Shashank is just following a standard IST.
No, first of all, I owe an apology and then I have a confession to make. Apology for my unprofessional behavior, but because something really unavoidable came up, so I had to attend it. And confession is that I'm not really very fluent in English, and seeing you guys, I'm having a little bit of inferiority complex, but I'll try to keep up. And we'll try to just
one thing, Shashank. See, we are not an English-speaking country, okay? So don't have this inferiority.
No, exactly.
Another stupidity, actually, what the left people are doing, that Sashita Rule can speak English, he becomes intellectual. No, sorry.
Yeah. Varun, why are you not doing this in Hindi? Hindi mein karo.
No.
English is a wider audience. That is true. I accept. But Shashank, if you're not comfortable in English, please do it in Hindi.
Yeah. If I feel like I'm not able to explain some point, then I'll switch to Hindi.
Yeah. Because if I don't do this in Hindi, because then I'll feel like Shashank, like my Hindi is not that great, so I'll mix like Hindi, Gujarati, English all in one statement. So I want to ask Shashank. So we talked about this
Yeah.
the terrorists, right? And how they're putting these subtle, sometimes it's overt, very in the face, and sometimes it's very subtle narratives that we have talked about this throughout the conversation. So Shashank, how does Bollywood put these messages? I want the audience to realize that Bollywood is also, there's some movies out there that are showing this narrative. So can you bring up some examples and talk about it?
Okay, let's start from like when India got independence in 1947. We'll have to start it from there. So, like prior to independence, 22, if we go 22 years before independence in 1925, two parallel ideologies started their, development and expansion in India. One was the RSS. RSS was founded in 1925, and the other was the Communist Party of India. Now, I'll get it to the Bollywood. I'm just connecting some dots here. Okay. So in 1925, when Communist Party of India was established, uh, the ideology on which it was established was not Indian. Their ideas were far away from nationalism. They had some, like out of the world things like global citizen and all. Chalo, wahan tak theek hai. Then there are numerous incidents where we can prove how he took right and how the double standard of this ideology. Now let's come to the independence of India. Right before 6 or 7 years before the independence of India, Communist Party of India started its own wing. I do not recall the exact name. It was a dramatic society, which was established by the Communist Party of India, and they called it as their cultural wing. Now, first of all, I'll come back to it, but I hope everyone here in the panelists, of course, and who all will like listen this podcast after this are aware of the term of the cultural Marxism. ये like जो Marxism है, it has nothing to do with politics. आज CPIM के 4 या 5 10 MP हो तो उससे फर्क नहीं पड़ता. उनका जो main focus था, the main motive was cultural Marxism, and they are working on it. So this the cultural wing which of CPIM then established itself as a very strong dramatic society across the country, and especially in Mumbai, in Maharashtra. So what actually happened was that in early days when the Bollywood was growing, when the Bollywood was expanding it, like it was getting popular throughout the country and also outside India. This the dramatic society of Communist Party of India, which was its cultural wing, had a very strong hold on it, and most of the directors and producers that were making it to the big level were coming from this. So hota kya tha? What actually happened in those initial days? There was a crowd because as you all know that acting and all these things were a very unusual thing, and like normal लोग नहीं करते थे ये लोग मतलब जो लोग बहुत हटके सोचते थे वो लोग ये काम करते थे उस टाइम में. अभी तो it's very easy, but उस टाइम पे it was a very like unusual thing. So the people who were actually getting into this film business and all, they were not very politically aware. They were a very creative people, and they wanted to do something creative. Like they weren't at all. They did not have any idea of what is all is going on over the world. So यहाँ पे ये लोग आए ड्रामा स्कूल में अपनी एक्टिंग सीखने. अब जो इनके ड्रामा होते थे जो मैं आई यानी कैसे मेरे दिमाग से हट गया उसका नाम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का, तो वहाँ के ड्रामा होते थे. So it was not like political at all, but the narrative of that drama was, the jinx was such that slowly and slowly their mind were intoxicated with the communist propaganda, with the Marxist propaganda. So when these small actors who had come to join a drama school to become an actor, they eventually made it to the big level and they emerged out as big actors. But वो एजेंडा वो जो इनके मन में भरा जा रहा था वो ड्रामा स्कूल में, through those small skits, through those small plays, that was very well manifested. And when they made it to the big screen and they became big Bollywood actors or big producers, big directors, so they automatically they worked as an agent. I think you can say subconsciously they didn't even have an idea that they are working for a certain kind of propaganda. And I'm very sure that most of them might even not know that the drama school that we are working with is the cultural wing of Communist Party of India. And this misconception we saw in the CA riots as well. यहाँ पे people were thinking that we are supporting students, but they didn't realize that the entire protest was managed by SFI, and SFI is the student wing of the Communist parties. So I hope that I may give you a point that why Bollywood. Like I don't think I exactly answered your question, but I had thought that I'm going to speak about this today. So I just explained that why Bollywood acts in such a way. It's a very strong reason behind this.
Oh.
And I hope my English was good.
Nay, nay,
Oh.
Yeah,
it was
you're
really
bang on.
good. It was really
I
good.
would like to
and
add
and and
Great.
to add to what Shashank said, then again the social dilemma, once you are in that group, that's the type of people you follow, and that narrative becomes richer and richer in your head. You think that that's reality. It literally happened with the Tanishq ad that we saw. I mean, everyone, like, they're just not learning that this is not what people want to see, and this is not what the ground reality is. So get out of that bubble. Try to follow people that you don't agree with. Try to, like, get their opinions and try to look for facts. Otherwise, you'll basically go deeper and deeper into that hole, and you'll think that that's an alternate reality, which is far from the actual reality.
Okay, go ahead.
There is a Twitter handle which has been started very recently. It's called Gems of Bollywood. Okay.
Yeah.
And Gems of Bollywood is precisely showing all the clips from all the Bollywood movies, how they have distorted things. They have normalized rapes into it. They have normalized crimes into it. They have shown wrong. If you recollect Bollywood movies which you have seen from your birth, always a dongi was Baba.
True.
Always a dongi was Baba. There was never a dongi Molvi, or there was never a dongi church father or something. Okay. All the black magic happened from Hinduism only. Okay. The casteism happened in Hinduism only. The oppression of the lower caste happened in Hinduism only. There are Dalits in Muslims also. There are Dalits in Christians also, which people don't talk about. So this happened. I mean, there was a very good example some days ago that we didn't even realize. The very famous movie from Amir Khan, the Tare Zameen Par. There was this song called Bam Bam Bole. The Bam Bam Bole is a religious slogan for us. They made it bum. We didn't even realize it.
Yeah, we didn't.
We didn't
As
even
to-
realize it. We enjoyed that song.
Dancing to it.
Yeah. This
So-
is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've completely seen that now. When I used to watch Bollywood movies, I was oblivious of it. But recently, in the last maybe a month or two, I've
it's
been
very subtle.
very subtle. It's very subtle. And it's, it has to be pointed out because people have to realize that this has been planted in our minds, in our subconscious for so long. So Shashank, you mentioned CAA. I want to bring that CAA question up. Is CAA fascist? I'll ask Shashank first and then Tanmay.
Like in my opinion, CA is the most liberal thing possible. Like, what was it? Kya tha? Like giving refuge to some people who have been persecuted based on their religion. The daughters have been raped, their houses have been taken, and like they are living as a third-class citizen there, and giving them asylum in our country. Like, how can this be fascist? Like, I don't like irony. I just killed itself with this question. Like, CA can be anything, but not fascist. It's the most liberal, is the most human thing that the government could have done. But like I got your question. Labeling CAA fascist just because we didn't include a community, like how insane is this? And on what ground? Like on what ground? We are the only point that they had was that why aren't Muslim included in CA? I think this was the only strong point they used to repeat again and again. So like it was a basic common sense that in a country which is a religious theoretic state, uh, वहाँ पे 95% religious fanatics बसते हैं, and all of them of course fundamental Muslims. So what's the point of adding Muslims here? Like यहाँ पे जो हैं वो तो वहाँ जाना चाहते हैं, तो वहाँ के यहाँ कौन आना चाहेंगे?
Right. Tanmay, elaborate.
So let's understand what the Citizenship Amendment Act is. So now the media is pitching it as a Ghar Wapsi program for all the Hindus in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan. But is it really that? If you read through the document, it offers direct citizenship for people who have come from those countries since December 2014, if I'm not wrong. Those
So
six
up
different
to
communities
December
are
2014.
after
Up to.
yes,
Up to
yeah.
2000.
The six different communities are Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, Parsis, Christians, and one more I don't know. I just missed on. So I mean, it is as well offering to these five other communities, leaving Hindus apart. And if you have seen the fanatic jihad that happens in Pakistan, the way Hindus, their houses are being, as Shashank rightly said, I mean, their daughters being forcibly converted and asked to marry their men without their permit, without their uh, they're just picked from their homes. I mean, why is this religious oppression happening there? And if CAA is brought into the picture for these oppressed communities in those three other countries, why is it a problem? And it is not that the oppression against these communities is reducing or is stopping. For example, in Sri Lanka, there was a time, I guess in 90s or in mid 2010, where Hindus were oppressed by the Sinhalese. But does the CAA give citizenship to Hindus from Sri Lanka? No. Why? Because the oppression has stopped. I mean, things are going well there. But why not in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan? Obviously, things are not right. Things are not going good. Hindus are being killed every day. Their daughters are being raped. Their children are being forcefully converted. Even in quarantine in COVID,
Yeah.
that's happening.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. One more thing, and
Please,
it's a very
go ahead.
interesting fact. These people who are like protesting against CA, they portray themselves as the Masiha of the Dalits. And the
Sure.
most interesting fact is the most of the Hindus living in Pakistan, majority of them are Dalits who are being oppressed by the Muslims here. And these people portray themselves as the Masiha of Dalits.
But that doesn't match
एक
the narrative here.
हाँ like Dalit प्रेम हो या minority appeasement हो, if it matches their narrative, then they'll talk about it, or they won't.
True.
They are concerned about the Rohingya Muslims of in Myanmar, but they are not they have no like sympathy with the Uyghur Muslims.
In
I
China,
hope I'm
yes.
right, in
But
China. Yeah.
yes, definitely. So,
And
I mean, I
I
would
would
like
like
to
to,
add to this. I mean,
yeah,
sorry, I just interrupted. There are more than 1 million Uyghur Muslims in Chinese detention camps. I mean, does that bother
Yeah.
to you? Does that bother to the Indian liberals? There are the Chinese forces are raping their women so that Chinese Han children are born to them, and that
Yeah.
culture goes out of them. So does that bother to you? I mean, in Libya, every day 700, 800 black men are being sold. Does that matter to you? In Pakistan, I mean, Dalits have been killed. I mean, not only Dalits, every other Hindu community. But yes, the title Dalits because the so-called say pseudo-liberals pitch it as their narrative here. But does that matter to them? No, it never will. Trust me, it never will.
so I just wanted to add this, that the recent case of blasphemy in Pakistan against the minority, that was the Asia Bibi case. And Asia Bibi is not a Hindu, she's a Christian. And there was a blasphemy case on her, that she was working in some kind of a farm and she said something about prophet. That was the allegation made on her, and she was oppressed. So CAA is also giving citizenship to oppressed minorities, which is including Christians. Christians are there, Sikhs are there, Buddhists are there.
Okay, so we have a question from the audience. Let's.
Okay, just
uh,
before taking question, I will just like to add one thing to Amir sir. Like the most shocking incident I like experienced in CA during that entire time of CA and all was the reaction of the Indian churches and some people from the Sikh community, like especially from the Christian community. Uh, like I think after 2014 elections, there was an incident that one or two churches in Delhi, their glasses were shattered, and their reaction was so strong that right from Vatican to all the like big power in the Christian world, they were very involved in the letters लिखे जा रहे थे and all, है ना? And Pakistan में Christians are persecuted like anything. and we as an Indian constitution and the Indian government tried to save them from it, and they were opposing it. So what I really couldn't understand that what was the reason behind it, especially coming from the Christian community.
And one more thing, the missionaries which work in India, okay, the missionaries are like widespread in South India. They came to India, they started converting people, they started building churches, but the missionaries never went to Pakistan. Why? The missionaries have to explain this. When they were so much concerned about the poor people in India and the welfare of poor people in India, why didn't they bother about the welfare of the poor people living in Bangladesh and Pakistan?
Very interesting. Good question. So again, related to the CAA, it's okay. Ryan Khan has this comment and a question. He says it's okay to grant citizenship to Hindu minorities from Pakistan and Bangladesh, like we talked about. But what about Muslims from Rohingya and Uyghur? And why can't they be granted citizenship? Isn't that?
I will answer this
Can I make
question.
a point? Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
please go ahead first. Yeah.
No, I just want to make a point, and it's not directly answering the question, but it's different. So, so CAA is a bill, right? It has certain guidelines. It only it basically like in it was kind of drafted originally at the time of partition, when like we allowed basically like any Muslim that want to stay in India can stay, and we allow, like we were like, if Hindus want to stay in Pakistan, it's fine. But we knew that based on the ideologies that Pakistan was created, it's gonna become hard for Hindus to live there, especially the poorer Hindus, because rich people nobody actually bothers. It's the poor that suffers, right? So we knew, like Mahatma Gandhi and everyone knew that this could happen in the future. That's when it was originally drafted, right? To help the minorities in countries like Pakistan, where or Bangladesh, where like there was a chance of like religious prosecution. So that's the bill, right? You can't include like everything that is possible, that is wrong in the world in that single bill. So stop like asking for that bill to do more. If you want to do something else for Rohingyas or anyone else, create separate bills for them. This bill is for that purpose. That's how like the law works. Second thing, it's just too funny that the bar is so high for India, that we should be the epitome or the utopian country that is acceptable to everything, and should, even though like we're hardly able to survive on our own, like our population is off the charts right now, we are still like expected to get all the refugees that are from any other countries that are coming to us. Why are these questions not asked from Saudi Arab? Like seriously, like Saudi, nobody asks these questions. They are kind of like the flag bearer of the community, right? That's where the religious places are. That's where, they are basically the foundation. But nobody asks these questions to them. They actually, like the recently, when they shook hands with Israel, nobody batted an eye. And like every day I see basically Indian Muslims abusing Israelis, or like abusing PM Modi for having friendship with Israel Prime Minister. There's so many like narratives that are being said that Israel is evil and India is trying to be friends with them, so India is against Indian Muslims. Saudi just shook hands with Israel. Nobody batted an eye and nobody questioned it. So like, like, is that not hypocritical? Shouldn't that be questioned? Like, why only like India is being questioned on all these different reasons? Why is not like, why is the bar only high for Indians and not any other country?
Okay. I wanted to add this because I wanted to get precisely to the question what was asked, that why Muslims are not included in CAA. First of all, we have to understand why Pakistan and Bangladesh were created. Yeah?
Exactly.
Pakistan and Bangladesh were
Exactly.
created on the religious lines. Okay,
True.
the Muslims decided to have a separate country that we cannot live with Hindus, and that's why they went. Now they have acquired land from us. Pakistan has got more land and less people in comparison to India. India has got less land and more people. So we are not in a position to take majority people back from them. Okay, if you want
And I
Indian administration to be run, first of all, then okay, give us some more province, and then we can run administration. First of all, you are also claiming now on Kashmir side, okay, and we are talking about Bangladesh and Pakistan, which were separated from India as East and West Pakistan at the time of partition. China is China's problem, so we cannot include Uyghur Muslim here. Yeah? So Myanmar was also not a part of India, so Rohingya also we cannot include here. So we cannot just say, okay, whoever wants to come to our country, you are welcome. It's not going to work like that. No country in this world is working on that line. Okay? So there are internal problems that has to be solved internally. And why Afghanistan has been included? Because Afghanistan also was once upon a time part of India.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of...
And being very unapologetic and being very clear about it, I think we should be very clear about this issue that India is a natural home for Hindus. It's the land of Hinduism. We are, like, there is only one country in the world where Hindus can go, just like Israel is for Jews, India is for Hindus. And this is a very clear answer to this question, that India is a natural home for the Hindus. It has never been a land of Islam or Christianity. Yeah, it is a land of Sikhism. We are inviting you to come, and even we are ready to take Christians. But वही है ना कि there is a certain amount of population that we can like allow to come. Muslims इतने हैं, अगर मुस्लिम हम लेने लगे तो हमारा तो सारा बैलेंस बिगड़ जाएगा भाई.
और 17 Muslim countries हैं.
53.
Sorry, yeah, what am I saying?
57.
Okay, 57.
So all these Muslim countries, like, why are they not taking?
2-3 मिनट में 60 भी होगी जिस हिसाब से बढ़ रहे हैं.
मतलब एक third largest religion और एक country वो भी पूरी नहीं है, and then उसमें भी इतना problem है. तो it's like I don't know what hypocrisy people are talking about.
And we talked about exodus, right, in the same discussion, that from one state of India, Hindus were pushed outside. You saw the autocratic behavior inside India. So now you can imagine the autocratic behavior they are having in their own country.
So we have people who are citizens of our country refuge in their own country. I mean, how worse can it get? And you know what? The fact is, there are 500 more incidences in India that people, Hindu people, have asked to leave their places where they used to stay. For example, recently this happened in Haryana, Mewat, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Villages, the entire villages, they don't have any Hindus. They're asked to leave. What happened in Kashmir in 1990s? Raliv, Galiv or Chaliv. Convert, live or die. That was the only option. What would you do?
So, Varun, even though this conversation is so awesome and I want to be like able to talk for 3-4 hours, I do need to go.
Right.
So it was really nice spending time with you all. Hope to stay connected and keep working on the same mission.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Akanksha, for joining us. You've been amazing, fantastic, and
thank you.
Definitely keep talking.
Bye.
Pleasure meeting you.
Bye.
Same here.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Okay, we've talked about history, we've talked about current. I want to talk about solutions. So the question I'm going to ask every panelist is, we've talked about secularism, right? So what can we do to bring about real secularism in India? And what solutions would you guys propose? So Shashank, we'll start with you.
Like, I don't think I will have a very correct answer on it, because I really believe that India doesn't need secularism in any of its senses.
Sure.
It is a civilizational country. We believe in civilizational nationalism. We do not believe in religion nationalism, but I strongly believe in civilizational nationalism. And civilizational nationalism, it conflicts with secularism at all the points. So secularism nahi chahiye. If India has to be prosperous, if India has to move forward, it has to adopt civilizational secularism, civilizational nationalism, and it's the only way forward. And it's going to happen. And we are working on it. 2014, it has started. We are going to achieve it in 20 or 30 years.
वो थोड़ा सा define करेंगे civilization nationalism वो क्या होता है?
हाँ, मैं civilizational nationalism मतलब like इंडिया का कल्चर क्या है, इंडिया का civilization क्या है. I'll just quote something from the संघ का हिंदू दर्शन क्या है. What is the Hindu darshan of राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ? I like to I'm very proud of it that I'm a Balka Swayamsevak, and I've been going to Arsha Shaka since my childhood, and I've learned a lot of things from there. So like Hindu, like I don't think I need to explain these things again and again that what is the word Hindu means. Anyone who's living on this side of the Indus River is an Hindu. अब यहाँ पे बात क्या आती है? Like we Sangh has already identified and Sangh has already said the Indian Hindu Darshan that anyone living in India is Hindu. His religious practices may be like anything, but he is still a Hindu. But only if he considers our heroes as their heroes, who considers as our civilization, like what is then actual civilization of Bharat. If we have already trashed the entire theory of Charles Darwin and again the theory of RN invasion. We do not believe in this. What we believe actually is that this is the land of the Sanatan Dharma. We have been living like this for like eternity, since eternity. So our civilization is this. We have to move forward. Like you can follow your faith, you can practice your religion, you can worship whosoever you want, but you have to learn this from the Muslims of Malaysia. We have to, like, the residents of India will have to identify and agree to its civilization whatsoever, because we cannot let because the word has been made in this way. Arab countries have been made in this way that they can survive with that religion only. वहाँ के conditions ही ऐसी हैं कि Hinduism cannot be practiced there, in my opinion. So India has, like, naturally it has been made the natural acceptance. जो एक बात करते हैं हम लोग, हर चीज पढ़ते हैं, जो लोग साइकोलॉजी पढ़ते हैं वो नेचुरल एक्सेप्टेंस की बात करते हैं. नेचुरल एक्सेप्टेंस यही है कि इंडिया को सनातन धर्म का जो सिविलाइजेशन है उसके हिसाब से चलना होगा. वी विल हैव टू live by its accords, and this is, I think, what civilizational nationalism is all about. It's not about religion. I repeat it again.
You know, I completely agree with what you just said about the. I'm born and brought up in Dubai, so I lived there for 15 years. I'm also Jain, and growing up in Dubai, I don't know how it is now. Maybe things are changed; they've gotten more liberal. But back then, we couldn't build a temple. We couldn't. You know, it was against the law of the land, and if they found us, they put us in prison. So we couldn't go outside and say we are Jain and we practice this, because if anyone finds out, then we're gone. Saudi Arabia is the same way. My parents lived in Bahrain. My dad worked in Saudi Arabia just 5 years ago, and the same thing happens there. You can't practice your Hinduism faith openly over there. You have to do it behind closed doors. So, Tanmay, let's go with you. Answer the same question of solution.
Secularism, right?
Yeah, and what's the solution?
So let's get the facts straight. Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, when he gave us the constitution, the word secularism was not added into it. The constitution was changed in the year 1975 when emergency was applied. And a lot of things have, not only the word secularism has been added, but a lot of things have been changed. For example, the Indian constitution had 23 images of Hindu personalities, famous Hindu personalities, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, Prabhu Shri Ram, Bhagwan Buddha. I mean, there is so much that we have lost even in our books, even which has to be a part of our culture, which has to be celebrated. And the so-called people who claim that India should be a secular country, I mean, they don't even know that secularism was purposely forced on us. And we were secular to a level that we cut off our land, named it Pakistan. We cut off our land, we named it Bangladesh. We cut off our land, we named it Afghanistan. I mean, if I were to go back, we have cut off Indonesia, we have cut off Myanmar, we cut off Malaysia, a lot of things. So we have lost a lot. And this is what we have now. If we can't be proud of what we have now, when will be the right time? So the solution is, even if whatever faith that you follow, whatever religion you are from, you need to address yourself as a Hindustani first, as a Hindu first, as a Sanatani first. No matter if you're a Hindu, you're a Christian, you're a Sikh, you're a Jew. But if you're a Sanatani first, you can be the right secular in India.
Meji?
So that, I think Tanmay made a very good point that to become a Sanatani, and somebody was asking this, like, are we already talking about the Hindu Rashtra? Hindu Rashtra doesn't mean Hindu religion as a Rashtra. It's like anybody accepting these Sanatan values inside them. it automatically makes you a Hindu Rashtra, right? It doesn't have to make religion. And who is oppressed in this country? Hindu is oppressed in India, right? Christians are converting the Dalits and tribals into Christianity. Muslims are oppressing in different parts. There are pressures coming from the border areas. There are invasions coming from the Bangladesh and the other side. So we are oppressed. So what secularism we are talking about, it's not clear. It is not secularism. We are talking about saving our civilization, because if we do not rise to the occasion now, we will be perished sooner or later.
So I'd like to add something. I'm sorry, Mr. Amay, to interrupt.
Yeah.
The word secular is represented to India in a very wrong way. So secular here means Hindus have to compromise on their culture, on their existence, on their history, on their oppression that they have faced. If you go to the West, Varun, you stay in America. If I don't know if you're aware about this, but every time the president takes his oath, he takes it in the name of the God, not in the name of the constitution. But in India, when the prime minister or any elected person takes the oath, he takes in the names of the constitution. Every time people sit for a dinner at the White House, the Pope comes and he blesses the food. Only then you can start eating the food. So see, they're still proud of what their culture is. They're openly practicing in their institutions. We are not.
Right.
I'm not saying everyone has to live and give up for the Hindu Rashtra. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we need to know what we are made of. The soil.
And यहाँ secularism का ये हाल है कि when Rafael came to India, like I didn't knew that it's a practice. Not only a Hindu priest comes, but a father from church and a Maulvi. All three of them come and they do their practices before aircraft is included in Indian Air Force. This is the extent of Indian secularism.
Like the Rafale, like what happened with Rafale now.
Yeah.
Yes, true.
And I watch Pakistan news very often, because you should be aware of what is happening in your neighboring countries. So there I see inside the parliament of Pakistan, every third or fourth word what they use inshallah, inshallah, Allah ye kar denge, wo kar denge. Now just imagine if sitting inside the Indian parliament, you start saying Jai Shri Ram se usse humne ye kar diya, wo kar diya, immediately they will start jumping up and down for secularism. Okay, we are secular to a larger extent. Our secularism cannot be compared to any country. The way of Hindus are accommodating of different type of people, nobody in this world does. Not even Europe, not even China, not even US. And they all acknowledge India for their rich civilization and culture. Our yoga, our Ayurveda, our Hindu practices are accepted worldwide. I mean, they are rich people across the world which are accepting Hinduism. I mean, our biggest problem in India is the Italian lady that we accuse from an opposition party. But how many people know that in Italy, Hinduism is the fastest growing religion? There are only 3 countries in Europe which recognize Hinduism as a religion: in Italy, Netherlands, and UK. UK because there are a lot of Indians living in UK and we were like part of their colony. Netherlands, there are like a lot of Hindus living in Netherlands who migrated from Suriname and the Caribbean side. And Italy because the Italians fought the case in Italian Supreme Court. That's where Supreme Court recognized Hinduism as a religion. So out of 50 countries in Europe, only 3 countries will accept Hinduism as a religion. Other countries are not even accepting. We accept everything. We are giving you land for your burial and everything. Hindus do not need any land for burial because we burn our bodies. Okay, the funerals happen in a different way. We are doing everything possible for you. What secularism are you expecting?
But उन्होंने इसको भी आसान बना दिया ना कि तुम लोग तो जल के चले जाते हो, हम इसी धरती में दफन हो जाते
हैं. They don't know, right? That's because they don't know what Hinduism means. Okay, we burn, go in the fire, and the ashes go in the water, right? So from the water, then again we get mixed into the land.
Right.
That's a whole theory, scientific theory of evolution of Earth, which is also there in the show which was talking about the one stranger of the National Geographic. It's all mentioned over there.
So
What secularism can we do? We have everything. We are giving you equal opportunity. Regarding the casteism, the problem is not casteism, or it is not problem of the upper caste and lower caste. We need more universities because our population has increased. Now in Mumbai, I know the colleges which were there in 1970s, they are the same colleges now. But what is the population now of 1970s and 2020, 50 years? It has multiplied like anything. So now if you don't get 95% in your school examinations, you don't get an admission. So what kind of a machinery are we talking that every kid is expected to get 95% or you get dropped out of your life? So we need more universities. Casteism is not our problem.
And what I think is, abhi to we are in negative secularism. First, we have to come in the secularism, the definition of secularism that they talk about. We will come to the definition of secularism that they talk about when the uniform civil code is applied. है ना? When there is a parallel education system for Hindus, just like they have for their madrasas, when all the personal law boards are banned, है ना? And all the other practices that are just allowed to one community, they all are abolished, then we will actually come to the actual secularism definition that they talk about. And then we have to take it forward to the what I talked about, cultural nationalism. Yeah.
civilization.
Why should we have secularism only restricted to Hinduism? What are other communities doing about secularism? Is there any restaurant in entire India run by a Muslim which is a pure vegetarian restaurant? You're a Jain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a Jain.
I challenge you in entire India from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, show me a single restaurant run by a Muslim person which is a pure vegetarian restaurant. Not a single restaurant.
No.
They don't come and dine in your restaurant because they don't eat your food.
Mm.
They restrict themselves only to eating the naans and the biryanis and everything. So why is only secularism restricted to us? What are you doing? Last 6 years, the way they have attacked Hindus, yeah, they call you bhaks, they call you anda bhaks, they do call you everything, whatever possible. They call you gobar khane wala, gomutra wala, and all these stupid terms they are talking about you. What have you done for secularism? Plus, please show me the example. Please show a precedence of your values. You don't have any precedence.
And I think we should invite them. Like, if you want secularism, let's come forward. You should like give all the special rights of the Muslim personal law. You should accept and you should demand the government that the uniform civil code should be applied in this country. You should demand the government that either you should abolish madrasa education system or create a parallel education system for Hindus, create a parallel board for Hindus. Sure. And they should demand the government that either you should ban the reservation that is provided in AMU or provide a parallel reservation just for Hindus in BHU. ये सब चीजें डिमांड करो, फिर बात करते हैं सेक्युलरिज्म की.
And not even a single Muslim university in this country is giving reservation to Dalits.
Yeah.
Whether it is Jamia Millia or the Aligarh University.
AMU.
AMU. None of them is giving reservation to Dalits. And then they are talking about the Dalit Muslim unity.
So, I'll give you a personal example. And we were talking about secularism, right? So for the last 25 weeks or so, we have been doing this grocery drive where right now during this COVID time, there are a lot of people who need groceries, they need food to survive. And so out of our temple, this is a kitchen that's based in a temple, we prepare food and we serve a grocery bag along with a hot prepared meal like chole rice or some sort of like Spanish rice with beans or different kinds of food items. So recently we had an incident where now what happens is there's some different organizations that come to us. They pick up 500 packets of meals. They pick up some meals and they distribute it to the homeless population in different parts of LA. So what happened is a couple of people were against it because it's cooked in a Hindu temple. They didn't want to give out this food. They didn't want to touch the food because these food packets were cooked in a Hindu temple and they called it Hindu food. Now that infuriated me because we are just trying to do something good for the community. It doesn't matter where the food was cooked. It doesn't matter what was put in the food, but this is vegetarian food that we're trying to serve the community. Why can't you look at it as if it's just food as opposed to Hindu food? Why do you have to put that label on it?
I would like to take up this question. I mean, not a question, but I'd like to make a statement. I'm a non-vegetarian. I'm sure Amay must be a non-vegetarian. I don't know about Shashank. Every time you buy raw chicken, raw meat, who do you buy it from? What is the way they kill it? It is as per the religious methods, right? The halal is a religious method of killing and then distributing the meat. But do we label it as, no, this is this, we won't buy this? Have we ever done it since generations? We have openly accepted it as food, no matter what is it. But that's secularism again in food. Come on. And
I
now
have a question. I have a very serious question. I'm a pure vegetarian, but sometimes, like even in the vegetarian foods, sometimes I see that they are halal certified. What does that exactly mean? I can't really get it. What's the point of halal certification on vegetarian products?
Yes,
There are
I just
halal
bought
certified buildings in Kerala.
in Kerala.
Vegetarian food.
Wow. Okay, so I want to take a few questions. Rayan has been asking questions. I don't want to leave him out. Let's see. He started with we were talking about the. He said you openly say make India Hindu Rashtra. I think this is Shank's point. Doesn't it contradict with the constitution? And what about Article 25? Was that added later on?
I think all the questions are already answered. Tanmay mentioned about this Sanatan Dharma. Shashank has gone on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think I have we have discussed about it, like what Hindu Rashtra actually mean, and yeah, we are giving the liberty to practice your religion. If we are not talking here about a fanatic state like Saudi Arabia where you cannot like practice your religion, we are saying that Hindu Rashtra will be an inclusive state where you can practice your faith, you can practice your religion, but all you need to do is, and all you will have to do is that you have to recognize your civilization. You have to recognize the law of the land. That's it.
You know, in India, we had this triple talaq bill passed last year in 2019. Can there be any secular bill apart from triple talaq bill? No, it cannot be, because triple talaq was an oppression towards the Muslim women, and they were complaining. Nobody else was complaining. I mean, we are sitting here in front of each other, okay, and likewise, you pronounce the word talaq 3 times, and the talaq is being announced. That's done. I mean, it is so unfair. And then Shashank rightly mentioned about the uniform civil code. So unless and until there is uniform civil code, the Muslim woman cannot challenge this in the court, and she cannot inherit the property or the alimony from the husband. And this was so unfair on them. We delivered them the triple talaq bill. This was the biggest secularism what we could do in this country.
Yeah, Amir sir just talked about the property issues, and I will just like to bring about a case in here, like all of you might know about it, Shah Bano case. How, like, what kind of merciless was that Rajiv Gandhi government? Because this lady was in her late 60s. Her husband divorced her just by saying talaq, talaq, talaq on a very trivial issue. But she was a strong lady. She was a very strong lady by character. She like moved to court, and she eventually won. She eventually, like, the court agreed to his demand, and he ordered her husband, to for, like, there was some compensation that you will have to give some kind of compensation to Shah Bano till you live. Nah, this was some kind of a order that the court had given. And the Rajiv Gandhi government, just because of the pressure of the religious fanatics, just because of the pressure of the Muslim fundamental organizations, he brought a law in the parliament. He brought a law in the parliament to change the decision of the Supreme Court. How, like, is there anything more disgusting that has happened in the Indian parliament than this Shah Bano case? And like, she might be the happiest woman. I'm not like aware if she is alive or not. But if she is alive, then she would be the happiest moment in the world when she would have known about the triple talaq bill that the Modi government has brought.
Wow, that's a very interesting point. Very good point.
And Rajiv Gandhi didn't stop over there. You know, he was doing the Muslim appeasement by bringing this law into the parliament. What he did after that was even stupid that Muslims didn't realize that. Okay, now to appease the Hindu community, after doing this bias, he did a Shilanyas in Ayodhya for the Ram Mandir. And he opened the gate. Now you can come and do the puja. So that's where the Ram Mandir movement took a different shape. So
and he even started his election campaign from Ayodhya.
To do some monkey balance between the two communities, he did most stupid things that people don't realize.
Wow. Shashank, you were saying he started?
Yeah, he started his election campaign from Ayodhya, and there is a very interesting incident in that also. Mani Shankar Iyer, who was a very staunch Marxist, he was like mad communist. Nah, he was a very close aide of Rajiv Gandhi. Like it has been a rule of the Gandhi family. The one person who is in power will always have a lapdog who will be a staunch communist. ये होता चला आ रहा है. They always have one in their generation. With Nehru, it was I think Menon, and with Indira Gandhi, there was one Muslim. He was a Muslim communist, and with Rajiv Gandhi, it was Mani Shankar Iyer. अब इनके साथ राहुल गांधी के साथ वो है गौरव प्रधान है ना. So Mani Shankar Iyer had written a very secular and all type of speech that Rajiv Gandhi had to give in Ayodhya, and he started his speech with Jai Shri Ram, and Mani Shankar Iyer was really mad about it. So that was a very interesting incident for me when I read about it.
Okay.
No. Presently, that Marxist for Rahul Gandhi is Shashi Tharoor.
Shashi Tharoor, and I have heard that Gaurav Pradhan.
No. He's Shashi Tharoor was also
no.
Before
joining
the Congress.
I'm forgetting his name. Who was this minister who has very less hair? He was, I think, village ministry or some kind of in the UP government. Okay, let it be.
So what, one of the points that I brought up in my posting has been something about kafir, right? That the Muslims don't really use that word because it goes against their religion. But time and again, we have seen that they've used it against us. Isn't that true?
Yeah, they use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jairam Ramesh. Sachin has written it here.
So that word kafir, can we elaborate? Can we talk about that? Because I think it plays a very important role in this conversation.
I think it's a too controversial word. I think we should not do any deep discussion into it, just to maintain the sanity of the discussion that we have. Yeah? So nobody can malign it. But only to make a short intervention on this word kafir, it is basically who is not practicing Islam. Okay. And the whole invasion which has happened from the 8th or 9th century, started from, and people don't know the Mughals were basically descendants or the Mongols. Yeah, the Genghis Khan invaded the Central Asia and Europe, and from there they came down to India. So from Uzbekistan and all this, so they became the Taimur and the Mughals. So today Mongolia is a Buddhist country. It's no more a Muslim country.
Yeah,
so it's a Buddhist country. Yeah?
Right.
So they had this ideology of, see, it was the principles designed at that time to suit their narrative. So whoever is a non-practicing Muslim, call him something, and force him to come to our religion. So that's where the word evolved. It shouldn't make any sense today, but still in the countries of Pakistan and all, they are using it.
But now, if you see how much the word is generalized, like Amay sir just mentioned about the Twitter handle, Gems of Bollywood, which is run by Swati Goel Sharma, a very great initiative. There was one tweet there, and it was really very shocking for me because I had listened to that song again and again and it never struck. There is a song in the movie Hamari Adhuri Kahani, and there is one line वरना है मिलता कहाँ हम काफिरों को खुदा. Matlab, the word has been so generalized that kafir, and today, like, and we have listened it to like thousands of times, that same song. But what the actual sense of that song and that lyrics were, ab samajh mein aa raha hai ki, like, it's very in a romantic song. In a romantic song, this comes up that वरना है मिलता का हम काफिरों को खुदा. And not in this, अगर याद करेंगे तो, like, I think in dozens of songs you will get this term. TikTok पे हम वीडियो देखते हैं. TikTok पे there is one song I heard that मैदान भरा काफिर की लाशों से, ऐसा कुछ था. So how indecent is that? How generalized this word is in India? It's really disappointing.
So yeah, I'd like to add a history perspective, my history perspective to this, because I saw your comment box, Varun. There you have been accused for a lot of things, and also in the chat box. So if you see the word kafir, it means the disbelievers in the monotheism, for example. But the effect that it has done, for example, if you read Alamgir I, Aurangzeb, I mean, what has he done to the son of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj? Have you seen the tragic death that he has given to him, the barbaric death? And in his book, Alamgir Nama, he has clearly glorified it, that Kafir Sambha, they used to call him Sambha, that Kafir Sambha was executed for not accepting Islam. That is clearly imbibed. I mean, there are many other chapters, there are many other verses, for example, chapter 9, verse 5, which glorifies the same again, but it is, I mean, there are loopholes, there are a way to interpret in a different way. For example, there is also a verse which says, you have to leave them if they repent it. If they repent for being that, then you can leave them. But again, there are many other times which have been, the reason is not well established, or we have had historical interventions which clearly say that there's a lot of tragic barbarism shown, expressed by this word. So yeah, I mean, this has to be accepted. What has happened has happened. So that does not mean we are blaming the current ones because of the mistakes that their ancestors have done. I mean, everyone has to learn. Even our ancestors have done wrong against the Dalits. But I mean, do we hate them, or do they hate us them for now? No. But does that mean we have to forget what the past is? Absolutely not. So we have to live with a liberal mindset and keep aside this hate and
learn from our past so we can move forward.
Definitely.
And Varun, you have to realize that what are the famous Muslim religious places in India? Okay. So it is the Hazrat Nizamuddin in Delhi, it is the Haji Ali Dargah in Mumbai, it is the Ajmer Sharif in Ajmer. All these are the famous Muslim religious locations. And whenever you go to these places, you will find more Hindus than Muslims. You will find more Hindus and Hindus worshipping there rather than Muslims. So how much more secular should we get? I myself visit the Haji Ali Dargah since my childhood because my family believes in it. I wear a Muslim skull cap and I visit there. Okay, but how much more secular should I get apart from this?
So I think we have gone over our time. So I'm gonna start our closing comments here. I think this was a fantastic discussion. I loved every minute of it. We got so many comments, so many questions from our audience. So first of all, I want to thank all of our panelists, Akanksha, who just left, Shashank, Tanmay, and Ame, for sharing your stories and engaging us in this very interesting discussion. I want to thank our audience for all of your questions and for your participation in this discussion. Thank you for keeping it civil, for not attacking our panelists, for not attacking us during this conversation. So I'm very grateful for everybody that joined in. I'm going to upload this video to YouTube over the next few days, and I will send the link out. If you have any comments, please send it to me. If you have any topics that you would like to see as part of this discussion, please send them to me. I would like to include it for sure. Our next conversation, we're going to carry this forward. And our next conversation is on October 29th, 2 weeks from today. And we're going to talk about the true Indian history. We talked about this today a little bit, but I want to dive much deeper into this in our next conversation. So please join us on Facebook and Zoom on October 29th. That's all from us for now. Love and abundance, everybody. It's all coming from love. And this is what we preach, Sanatan Dharma. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, our panelists again. And I wish
Jai
that...
Shri Ram.
Thank you, Guru.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri
Jai
Ram.
Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram. Jai Janendra.
Jai Jinendra.
Jai
Jai
Janendra.
Shri Ram.